She painted a door on the wall of her prison. The vampire king walked through it to rescue her. The rain fell like silver knives against the stones of the tower. Each drop echoed through the cold, empty halls, and the wind carried a mournful whisper that seemed to speak only to those who were trapped. Ilara pressed her forehead against the wall, feeling its chill seeping through her skin. Her fingers traced the lines of her latest painting, a door that existed only in her imagination, yet she had given it shape and life on the cold stone. Day after day she had painted doors, tall ones, narrow ones, some with intricate patterns that twisted like vines and flowers, some simple and plain. Each door was a dream she could almost step through. Each door was hope. And yet, every time she finished one, the walls remained solid, the locks unbroken, the air heavy with despair. Ilara had not always been a prisoner. She had once known warmth, laughter, and the light of her father's halls. But those days were gone. Now her world was a single cell at the top of a tower, far from the life she had once known, surrounded by silence and shadows. Her guards were cruel, though unseen. Her meals came through a small hatch, food cold and tasteless. Her only companions were the memories she carried and the visions she painted on stone. Tonight, something felt different. The rain seemed louder, more urgent. Her hand froze mid-stroke, the brush hovering an inch from the wall. The door she had painted this time was larger than the others, with an arch that seemed to glow faintly in the flickering candlelight. She had imagined it more vividly than ever, as if she could step through and leave the tower forever. A sudden shiver ran through the room. The shadows in the corners seemed to move, stretching like long fingers across the walls. Ilara's breath caught in her throat. She turned slowly, half expecting to see one of the guards, but the room was empty, silent except for the storm outside. And then she heard it. A soft, deliberate footstep, almost a whisper, echoing on the cold stone floor. Her heart pounded, and her hand trembled so badly that the brush fell from her fingers with a dull clatter. "Who's there?" she called, her voice shaking. No answer. Only the rain. The shadow shifted again, and for a moment she thought she saw a shape behind the painted door. A tall figure, moving in a way that was both graceful and impossible. She blinked, rubbed her eyes, and the figure remained. The door. It moved. It shivered like a living thing. The carved patterns of vines and flowers twisted under the faint light, almost breathing.
And then, slowly, impossibly, the shape stepped through.
A man, tall, strong, and cloaked in black that seemed to drink the light around him. Pale. His eyes were pale as moonlight, and his presence filled the room with a cold, powerful air. Every instinct in Ilara's body screamed danger, but something deeper, something unexplainable, rooted her to the spot. "I am no guard," he said, his voice low and smooth, like silk sliding over stone. "I am here for you, Ilara." Bess. He knew her name. How could he know her name? "Who are you?" she demanded, backing toward the corner of her small cell. "The one they call Kael," he replied, stepping closer, his gaze intense and unyielding. The Vampire King. Ilara stumbled back, her hands pressed to the wall. Stories had reached even her lonely tower. Stories of a dark king who ruled from a castle beyond the forest, a ruler feared by all. Breaths. Some said he devoured souls. Others said he had no heart at all, only hunger and power. And yet, as she looked at him, she saw something else in his eyes. A loneliness so deep it mirrored her own. Why? Why are you here? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. To save you, he said simply.
You do not belong here. No one should.
I am just a prisoner. I cannot leave. You cannot save me. Kale's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile, but there was no warmth in it. Bess. Only certainty. You paint doors on walls, he said softly. You imagine a world you cannot reach. That is why I am here, because one of your doors led me to you. Ilara stared at him, confusion and fear battling something else she could not name.
A door!
Bled you?
He nodded. Magic has many forms.
Some are born in spells, some in blood, some in hope. You created a door with your longing, and I found it. Bay. Her heart thundered. She wanted to step back, to scream, to reject this impossible, terrifying man. And yet, something inside her, something long buried, yearned for this, for the chance to escape, for the possibility that someone, anyone, could see her, could hear her, could take her away from this cold, silent prison. Can I trust you? She whispered, though her voice trembled with both fear and desire. Kale reached out his hand, pale, almost glowing in the dim candlelight, and yet solid, strong, unyielding. Trust is not given, he said. It is earned, but you must decide. Will you come with me or remain a prisoner forever? Elara's fingers hovered above his, unsure if this was dream or reality. Every instinct in her body screamed to flee, to hide, to protect herself. But every painting she had made, every door she had imagined, had led her to this moment. Bas. She took a step forward. Then another. The storm outside roared, and lightning illuminated the room, casting shadows that danced like spirits. Elara's heart raced as she placed her hand in his. The cold of him was shocking, but not unpleasant. It was real. It was a life beyond the walls she had known. Hold on, Kale said, his voice a low rumble. He turned, moving toward the wall where her painted door shimmered faintly in the candlelight. I will not fail you. Elara felt the brush of wind as he stepped through the painted door. And then she realized. She had no choice but to follow. Her legs moved almost of their own accord. She stepped toward the arch, her hand still in Kael's, and crossed the threshold from the world she knew into the unknown. The moment her foot passed through the painted door, the tower seemed to sigh behind her. The stone walls trembled. Shadows twisted and reached as if they were alive, and she felt the weight of the years she had spent alone pressing against her chest. Then they were gone. Tower and prison, night and storm replaced by silence. A darkness that was different, thicker, alive. The forest awaited, strange and alive, whispering secrets she could not yet understand. Kale did not speak. He held her hand tightly, his presence a solid anchor against the unknown. But Elara's fear battled with the pulse of exhilaration in her chest. She did not know what awaited them, what dangers lurked in the cursed forest, what truths would come to light. But for the first time in years, she felt the spark of freedom. And yet, a thought lingered in her mind, cold as the stone she had left behind. The painted door had worked, but who or what had opened it from the other side? The forest was alive in ways Elara had never imagined. Trees twisted unnaturally, their roots coiling like serpents over the soft, damp earth. Mist clung to the branches, and every sound, the rustle of leaves, the snap of a twig, echoed with a strange, hollow resonance. The moon hung low, pale as silver, casting ghostly light on the path before her. Elara held Kale's hand tightly. His presence was solid, commanding, yet strange in its intensity. Bration. Every step through the forest felt like stepping into a dream or a nightmare. Shadows moved in the corners of her eyes, twisting and stretching, yet when she turned, nothing was there.
You must stay close, Kale warned, his voice low and steady.
The forest, it is not empty. It does not forgive. Elara nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She had trusted him enough to follow through the painted door, but now that they were in this living darkness, she felt the weight of fear pressing down on her chest. Bay, every instinct urged her to run, to hide, to scream, yet she could not leave his side. "The trees," she whispered. "They feel alive." Kyle's pale eyes scanned the shadows. "They are. This forest is a remnant of an old curse. Bow. Long before I was born, before kingdoms rose and fell, it was tainted. Spirits linger here, bound to the land. They do not forgive trespassers lightly." Psst. Elara shivered. The air seemed thicker, heavier, as if breathing itself had become a burden. Beth. She noticed strange shapes moving in the mist, faint glimmers that might have been eyes or reflections of her own fear. Each time she blinked, they seemed closer, always just beyond reach. But suddenly, a low growl cut through the silence. Elara froze, her heart hammering in her chest. Kale's grip on her hand tightened. "They know we are here," he said softly. "And they do not like visitors." From the shadows emerged a pair of creatures, neither fully animal nor fully spirit. Their eyes glowed faintly red, their bodies wrapped in black mist that swirled with every movement. They moved with unnatural speed, circling around them, sniffing, waiting. Elara's breath caught, rasp. She had never seen anything like them. Her first instinct was to flee, but Kale stepped forward, standing between her and the creatures. Bay. "Stay behind me," he commanded. His voice held authority that made the shadows hesitate. "Do not be afraid." The creatures lunged. Kale moved like a shadow himself, faster than the eye could follow. One swipe of his hand sent a wave of energy that scattered the black mist. The creatures yelped and vanished into the fog, leaving a faint echo of growls behind. Bay. Elara stared at him, wide-eyed. How did you do that?"
Kale's face was calm, almost serene, but his eyes glimmered with a dangerous light.
"This forest obeys me," he said. "But it is not tame. I cannot control everything. And even I have limits."
Elara realized then how fragile their safety truly was.
She had imagined that stepping through the door meant escape, freedom. But the world beyond the tower was not kind. Bait. Danger waited at every turn, and trust was the only weapon she had. They walked in silence for a while, only the sound of their steps and the distant whispers of the forest accompanying them. Elara's mind swirled with questions she did not dare ask aloud. Was Kale truly? Why had he come for her? And most pressing of all, Why did she feel this pull toward him? A mixture of fear, awe, and something she could not name.
After hours of walking, the mist began to thin.
The trees grew taller, straighter, and the air became colder, sharper. Moonlight fell in beams, illuminating patches of the ground. For the first time, Elara could see the faint outline of Kale's castle in the distance, rising above the dark hills like a shadow carved from stone.
It is not far now, Kale said, his voice softer.
But you must remain vigilant. There are those who would see me. See you! Undone before we reach safety! Elara's stomach tightened. Oh. Could follow us. Kyle's eyes darkened.
Those who profit from despair. Your captors are not the only danger in this world.
And the forest. The forest will test you, as it tests me.
The wind howled, carrying voices that seemed almost human, almost pleading. Elara shivered, hugging herself.
I don't know if I am ready, she admitted. I've never been outside the tower.
I've only imagined freedom. Kale stopped walking and turned to face her fully.
The moonlight caught the sharp lines of his face, the pale skin that almost glowed in the dark. His eyes softened, a flicker of something ancient and sad shining through. You are braver than you know, he said. Every door you have painted, every hope you have clung to. It brought you here. You already have courage. Now you must trust it. His words warmed something cold inside her chest. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps the fear she had carried all her life was not a prison, but a key. They resumed walking, the castle drawing nearer with every step. But just as hope began to bloom, a shadow darker than night itself emerged from the mist. It moved with purpose, its form shifting and impossible to define. Elara could feel its gaze on them, sharp and hungry. Kael's grip on her hand tightened. "Stay behind me," he commanded. "It is coming for us." The shadow leapt, faster than anything Elara had ever seen. Kael moved instantly, intercepting it. Light flashed from his hands, and the creature hissed, recoiling. But this was no ordinary attack. It was relentless, intelligent. Every strike Kael made was met with cunning, as if the forest itself was conspiring against them. Elara's fear was a living thing in her chest, beating so loudly she thought it would burst. And yet, despite her terror, she felt an odd thrill. She was not alone. Kael was there, unyielding, a wall of strength in a world that had always made her feel small and powerless. Hours, or perhaps minutes, she could not tell, passed. The battle seemed endless, the shadow dissolving into mist only to reform moments later. Dale's face was set in concentration, his power visible in the faint glow that surrounded him.
Elara's hands trembled, but she refused to let go.
She would not run. Not now. Not ever. Finally, with a roar that shook the forest, Kael struck the shadow with a final surge of energy. It dissipated into nothingness, leaving only silence and the faint echo of growls fading into the distance. Elara sank to the ground, gasping. It's gone, she whispered. Kael knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. For now, he said. His voice was calm, but there was a tension beneath it that made Elara's stomach twist. The forest will test us again. And beyond it, there are forces far more dangerous than shadows. She looked at him, seeing not just the power, but the weight he carried. The centuries of isolation, the curse that had shaped him into both savior and monster. She realized then that this journey was not just about escape, but about understanding him, and perhaps understanding herself. They continued toward the castle, the moonlight guiding their path. Every step was heavy with both hope and fear. The forest whispered round them, carrying voices that spoke of secrets and promises, dangers and salvation. Alara's heart ached with longing, for freedom, for safety, for the strange magnetic figure who had saved her from her prison. And then, just as the castle's shadow loomed closer, she heard it, a sound not of the forest, not of the wind, but of intent, deliberate and cruel. Something had followed them through the forest, something unseen. Its presence pressed down on her chest, a weight of malice and hunger. Cale's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. "It is not finished," he said. "They have found us, and they are patient. They will wait for the right moment." Elara's fingers tightened around his hand. Fear, awe, and an unspoken bond surged through her. She realized that the forest was only the beginning, that danger and desire were intertwined, and that her life and her heart would never be the same. The shadow was out there, watching. Breaths, waiting, and the first true test of their trust, strength, and courage had yet to come. The castle rose before them like a shadow carved from stone. Its towers were jagged, blackened spires that seemed to pierce the night sky, and the walls were alive with the faint shimmer of magic, humming under the pale moonlight. The wind carried the scent of frost and ancient stone, and the forest behind them sighed, restless, as if reluctant to let them pass. They opened silently at his touch, revealing a vast courtyard filled with mist that swirled around frozen statues.
She shivered not from cold, but from awe.
The castle was alive in a way she had never imagined, breathing, observing, almost conscious. This place, it feels alive, she whispered. Keo glanced at her, his pale eyes unreadable. "It is," he said softly. "Every stone, every shadow. Every corner has memory. The castle remembers everything I have done, everything I have lost. It is both sanctuary and prison." Elara swallowed. She had known fear before, in the tower, in the forest, but nothing like this. Here, every shadow seemed to move with purpose, and the air was heavy with both power and sorrow. Bah! She felt the weight of centuries pressing down, pressing her forward, and yet also holding her in place. Kael led her through corridors lined with tall, dark windows. Candles floated along the walls without holders, flickering in the air, casting light that danced and shimmered. The silence was broken only by their footsteps and the occasional distant echo, a whisper of something long forgotten. Breaths. "This will be your room," Kael said, stopping before a heavy wooden door carved with intricate patterns of stars and moons. "It is safe here."
"The castle will protect you, but only if you remain inside these walls." Elara nodded, her fingers brushing over the carved symbols.
The patterns seemed to vibrate slightly under her touch, responding to her presence. "It feels different from the tower," she said. Kael's gaze softened. "Bess, it is not just stone and mortar. It is a living thing, and it can sense intentions, fears, and truths. You must learn to respect it." She followed him inside. The room was spacious, with a high ceiling and a large window that looked out over the black hills surrounding the castle. The air was warmer here, calmer. Fact. For the first time since her imprisonment, Elara felt the stirrings of peace. "I will rest here," she said, seating herself on the edge of the bed. "But why did you come for me? Why risk everything?" Kyle moved closer, leaning against the doorway. "Because you should not have suffered alone," he said. "Because you are important. And because I sensed something in you that I have not felt in centuries. Hope. Courage. A spark that even the darkest curse cannot extinguish."
Elara looked at him, unsure what to say.
There was warmth in his words, and yet beneath it was a weight she could not yet understand. She wanted to ask more, but fear held her tongue. Bare. Instead, she whispered, "I don't understand. How can anyone like you?" "But, care?" Kale's eyes softened, but the edge of his sadness remained. "I have loved and lost," he said quietly. "Psst. I have trusted and been betrayed. My heart, my soul, they are heavy with time. I am not easily capable of trust."
But you awakened something I thought was gone.
Bess. Elara felt a strange pull in her chest, a mixture of fear, awe, and something deeper, almost painful in its intensity. She wanted to retreat, to protect herself, but every nerve in her body told her to stay, to listen, to trust. Desperation. Days passed, though time felt strange within the castle. Shadows shifted and whispered. The walls hummed softly, and the air was always tinged with magic. Kyle showed her the castle, each room more astonishing than the last, an endless library filled with ancient tomes, a gallery of paintings that moved as if alive, a hall where candlelight never faded. And yet beneath the wonder, Elara sensed the weight of Kyle's loneliness. He walked through the corridors with the precision of someone who had been alone for centuries. Yet she saw moments when his guard dropped, when he paused at a window, staring out at the dark hills, a flicker of longing in his eyes. One evening, as the moon rose high, Kale brought her to a hall lined with mirrors. Each reflected not only their images but faint glimpses of other times, other places, and other lives. "These mirrors," Elara whispered, mesmerized. "They show things that were, things that could be." Bare. "They show possibilities, memories, regrets. Some truths are easier to see in reflection than in the present." Elara's gaze fell on her own reflection. She saw herself as she had been in the tower, small, frightened, lonely, and as she was now, stronger, braver, alive. She also saw, faintly, a shadow behind Kael, a figure she could not name. A warning, or perhaps a promise. "You are learning," Kael said softly, "and you are changing me as well. I thought centuries of solitude had made me untouchable. But you are different."
Elara felt her heart tighten. The pull between them, which had been growing since the tower, now became almost unbearable.
She longed to reach out, to close the space between them, but fear held her back. She was afraid of what it meant to care, to trust, to hope. But then, as if summoned by her thoughts, the castle shivered. The air grew cold, and shadows shifted more violently. Ban. A door in the far wall opened silently, revealing a passage that had not been there before. Darkness spilled out, carrying a whisper that sounded almost like her name. Kale's expression darkened. "The castle is warning us," he said. "Something has come." Bang. Something that does not want you here, that does not want me free. Elara stepped back, fear gripping her. What is it? Kale's eyes glimmered with a dangerous light. It is a force older than the forest, older than kingdoms. It thrives on despair, on control, on fear. And it has been waiting for you as long as I have been bound to this curse. Elara felt a cold knot in her stomach. All the danger they had faced in the forest seemed small compared to this. She realized then that her escape was only the beginning, that the castle, this sanctuary, was also a battleground. Bess, I can help, she whispered, though her voice shook. I don't know how, but I feel something in me. When I paint, when I imagine, I feel power. Psst. Kale turned to her, his gaze sharp. That power, it is rare, dangerous, and it responds to me, to the curse I carry. You must be careful. One wrong thought, one uncontrolled emotion, it could destroy us both. Elara swallowed, nodding. She felt the energy thrumming in her veins, a strange connection to Kale and to the castle itself. It was frightening and yet exhilarating. She realized that she was no longer a passive passenger in this story. She was part of its unfolding. They spent the night in the Hall of Mirrors, the candles floating around them like stars. Elara watched Kale as he moved silently through the reflections, tracing patterns with his hands that made the glass shimmer. She understood that he was not only a king of darkness, but also a guardian, a protector, a being shaped by centuries of power and pain. There. And yet, for all his strength, for all his power, she saw the loneliness beneath it, a loneliness that mirrored her own. When morning came, pale and quiet, Elara felt a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. She was beginning to understand the depth of Kale's burden and the role she could play, not as a savior but as a partner, a force that could help him confront the curse and the dangers that awaited. But the castle was not finished testing them. As they descended a spiral staircase, a sudden roar echoed through the halls. The mirrors trembled. The candles flickered violently and shadows writhed along the walls like living things. Kale drew in a sharp breath, his hand going instinctively to the hilt of a sword she had not noticed before. "They have found us," he said, his voice tight. "Not the forest. Not the shadows outside. Something inside, something that has been waiting for centuries." Elara's heart pounded. "Can we fight it?" she asked, her voice trembling. Kale's eyes softened as he looked at her, the centuries of sorrow momentarily replaced by something gentler, something almost human. "We will," he said, "together. But you must trust me completely. And you must trust yourself." Elara nodded, feeling the strange thrill of fear and anticipation. She was no longer the girl in the tower, weak and alone. She was here, alive, powerful in ways she had not yet fully understood. And she was not alone. But as the shadows coiled and the castle seemed to hum with an ancient awareness, she realized the truth. The greatest test was still to come. The danger was not outside, they were inside the walls, inside the heart of the castle itself. And whatever was waiting would challenge them both, testing not only their courage but the fragile bond that had begun to grow between them. The castle held its breath. The shadows waited, and Elara understood that the next moment could change everything. The castle was silent now, but the silence was heavy, almost alive. Shadows clung to the corners of every hall, and the air was thick with magic older than kingdoms, older than the mountains themselves. The faint hum of the walls echoed like a heartbeat, reminding Alara that this was no ordinary place. This was Kale's world, his domain, and also the prison of his curse. Alara stood in the center of the hall, her fingers trembling. Her power pulsed through her veins, a soft, steady hum that connected her to the castle, to Kale, to something greater than either of them. But she had felt it grow over the past days, small at first, fragile like a candle flame. But now it was stronger, alive, almost demanding to be unleashed. Dial emerged from the shadows, his pale skin glowing faintly in the candlelight. His eyes were darker than the night itself, yet in them there was something fragile, almost human, something he had not shown anyone in centuries. "Bay, it waits," he said quietly, his voice low and steady. "The force that cursed me, that has haunted me since before you were born, it knows we are ready."
Alara's heart beat fast.
"I feel it," she said. "It is here, inside the castle." Kale nodded. "It is patient. It has waited centuries for me to grow careless, for me to lose myself in darkness. But this time,
I will not let it win. Not with you. The castle walls seem to shiver.
Bay, shadows twisted and stretched like living things. A cold wind swept through the hall, carrying whispers that sounded like voices of the long dead. The air grew heavy, pressing against her chest, making it hard to breathe. She closed her eyes and focused on the power within her, the spark that had led her out of the tower and through the forest. It was not only hope, it was courage, love, and determination. Best. She felt it responding to Kale's presence, their connection like a bridge between two hearts and two lives. Then, without warning, the shadows erupted. A figure emerged, cloaked in darkness that seemed to absorb the light around it. Its eyes glowed with a red, fiery hunger, and its voice slithered through the hall like a knife. "You dare enter my domain," it hissed. "You dare challenge me?" Kale stepped forward, placing himself between Alara and the shadow. "I have waited centuries for this moment," he said. "But you will not harm her. Not today. Not ever." The shadow laughed, a sound that made the walls vibrate. "You are weak, Kale. You cannot escape what you are."
You cannot protect her. She is only a human, fragile and fleeting.
Alara's hands trembled, but she did not move back. Instead, she stepped closer to Kale, her power humming in response to the shadow's darkness. "I am not weak," she said, her voice steady. "And together we are stronger than you know." The shadow lunged, fast and violent. Kale moved with him, intercepting the attack. Light flared from his hands as he pushed back, but the shadow was relentless, moving with cunning and strength. Alara raised her hands, closing her eyes, and focused. The painted doors she had created in her mind flared to life, glowing faintly as if responding to her will. She imagined a door in the hall, a door made not of stone but of light. It appeared, shimmering and real, and the shadow recoiled from it as if afraid. Alara felt her power expand, connecting with Kael's, forming a shield of warmth and light against the darkness. We are more than fear, more than despair. The shadow hissed and twisted, its form writhing, trying to break the light. Cale joined his power with hers, a wave of energy that pulsed through the hall. The candles flickered violently, the mirrors trembled, and the walls groaned under the force. The shadow screamed, a sound of rage and frustration, but it could not break the bond between them. Elara felt a sudden surge of clarity. The doors she had painted, the hope she had clung to, the courage she had found in the tower and the forest. They were all part of her power. She no longer feared the shadows, the curse, or the force before them. But she embraced her strength, her connection to Cale, and the castle itself. With a final, determined thought, she stepped forward and reached toward the shadow, her hands glowing with light. Cale mirrored her movements, their energy entwined. The shadow shrieked one last time before dissolving into mist, leaving only silence in its wake. Elara collapsed to her knees, breathing heavily. Cale knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder, his touch steady and reassuring. "You did it," he said softly. "You saved us. Bear, you saved me." Elara looked at him, her chest still heaving. "We did it," she corrected. "Together." Cale's lips curved into the faintest smile, the first she had seen in centuries that was free of sorrow. "Together," he agreed, "but I never thought, I never hoped that I could feel like this again. Back, alive, free, connected." Elara felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling of home, of safety, and of love. She realized that her journey, the tower, the forest, the castle, had all been leading to this moment. She had discovered not only freedom, but the power to shape her destiny. The castle seemed to sigh, as if releasing a burden it had carried for centuries. The walls shimmered, the mirrors reflecting not only their images but glimpses of light, of life, of hope. The darkness had been vanquished, but had left behind a sense of reverence, a reminder that power and courage must always be tempered with love and trust. Cale helped Elara to her feet. They walked through the hall, their hands intertwined, feeling the castle shift around them in approval. Every shadow now seemed softer, the air lighter, as if the ancient stone itself had recognized their victory. They reached the highest tower, where the first painted door had been. Elara ran her fingers along the wall, tracing the faint patterns she had created. The door shimmered faintly, a memory of her imagination made real. Cale stood beside her, watching. "You have changed everything," he said. "Not only for yourself, but for me, for this castle, for the world beyond. The curse is broken, but more importantly, we have found each other." Elara looked up at him, her eyes shining. "And now?" she asked. "Now," he said, "we step into the light together." The sun rose slowly over the hills, painting the castle and the forest in shades of gold and silver. Elara and Cale stepped onto the balcony, feeling the warmth of the morning for the first time. The air was fresh, carrying the scent of freedom, of life, of beginnings. Yet even as they stood there, hand in hand, a faint shimmer in the distance caught Elara's eye.
Another door, glowing softly, hovered in the misty horizon.
But it was not a threat, not yet. But it was a reminder that magic, hope, and adventure were infinite, that their journey had only begun. Cale noticed her gaze. "Another door," he said quietly, a trace of a smile on his lips. "Another choice, another adventure. But this time, we face it together." Elara squeezed his hand, her heart full of courage and love.
"Together," she echoed. And as the light of the new day bathed them, the castle behind them no longer felt like a prison but a sanctuary, a place where hope, courage, and love had triumphed over darkness.
The shadows of the past were gone, replaced by the warmth of connection, trust, and a future waiting to be written. For the first time in her life, Elara understood that freedom was not only a place, but a choice, a connection, and a courage she had always carried within herself. And beside her, Kael. The vampire king, once bound by centuries of curse and sorrow, smiled truly for the first time in ages, a man unchained, redeemed, and alive. The doors she painted, the courage she discovered, the love that grew between them, all had led to this moment. Patience. And as the wind whispered through the castle towers and the first rays of sunlight kissed their faces, Elara and Kael stepped forward together, ready to face whatever the world, or magic, might bring. The forest behind them, the shadows around them, the castle beneath their feet. They had survived. They had triumphed. And they had found each other, Bay. And though the doors would continue to appear shimmering in distant horizons, one truth remained clear. Together, they could step through any door, face any darkness, and shape their own destiny.